Hi everybody, my name is Larsen. Most of the time when you're learning a song, then you will practice it until you can easily improvise over it and you can follow the chord changes, you know the song and you know the chord progression, you know all the arpeggios by heart, and then you think, well, now I know the song, I can move on to the next one. While that is somewhat true, there is another level that you also want to work towards, and that is really going to make a huge difference once you start improvising. Because this way of knowing it, where you just know the chords and the arpeggios, is maybe a little bit superficial. And I don't think it really matters whether you're playing blues or heavy metal or jazz. You need to go further than just playing the right notes. The skills I'm talking about in this video are not about playing flashy arpeggios in tempo 360 or knowing the most bebop scale. They're really about something else, something much more fundamental, which is really about how you play a melody and how you create melodies when you're improvising. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, improve the way that you solo, check out some interesting chord voicings or arpeggios, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. The skill that you want to develop for this is really your ability to listen to yourself or listen to your creativity and then try to play the things that you hear in your head. And you really want to focus on practicing this while you're improvising. I think that's one of the easiest ways to learn this, that you really try to play something and then use what you just played to figure out what comes next. So maybe let's first just try and listen to a 12-bar solo where I'm trying not to listen to myself and I'm trying to not connect the phrases. So usually when I'm improvising, then I'll play something, and while I'm listening to what I'm playing, what is coming out of the instrument, then I'm using that to decide what to play next. And if you take that away, and if you're just trying to play the right notes, because with this solo, you can also hear it doesn't sound wrong. There are not really any wrong notes or anything like that. It's really just about not really having a shape and also not having a story to the solo. There's no connection, and you could almost take 2 or 3 of these choruses and then copy and paste them together and it wouldn't make any difference. Instead, it's really important to also have this element of story and this element of connection in your solo, so that I'm playing this phrase now and that's the reason why I'm playing the phrase afterwards. So there is some connection between, and it's not just this is an F7 and this is a B flat 7. The first thing you want to train with this is probably to start thinking in phrases when you're soloing. Because what you hear in this previous solo, where I'm not really trying to connect anything, is that it just becomes a bunch of notes and I'm not really thinking about the solo as a set of phrases. I'm just thinking about putting some notes on each of the chords. And that's a very common thing, and it can be also kind of difficult. Because it's difficult to play a solo and play an instrument, if we can play something, we just start to worry about what we're playing and not really thinking about, okay, it has to be something like small sentences that has a beginning and an end. You need to work on that, and you need to get used to thinking like that. And that's an important skill in improvising. So one good way to start with this, probably the best way to start with this, is to start working on call response. Because if you're playing call response, then you have to think about a part of a phrase that you're playing as a small unit. So you have to play something and then consider that the call, and then listen to what that was and come up with a response to it. And this way of playing is really useful. It's also something that's really connected with the blues. So if we listen to a solo where I'm using that idea while I'm improvising, that sounds like this. So in this example, I'm kind of using call response in 2 ways. One is sort of the typical way that you would use it in a blues, which is really just like 2 layers and 2 different voices. And of course that works well. You want to develop it further than that, but that's a good place to start. So the way I'm doing it in the solo is I have this type of call and then some sort of blues phrase. I don't know exactly what I played, but it's just some simple phrase a little bit lower. And then we get a repeat of the call with an extension here, and then the next phrase is just some sort of alto dominant that works then as a sort of response to that, something like that. And then that goes on, and I keep working with the first call and change it around a bit. But you're always thinking in terms of, now we have a statement, and then we get an answer to that, and then the next time is actually, now I'm repeating the statement. I could also just all the time just think about what do I hear next, because of course you don't always want to play sort of this ping pong game with yourself. But this idea of training how to think in phrases, and also how to listen to a phrase that you played and use that to create the next phrase, is really important. And this is a good way to develop it. So if you want to practice this, of course you can just practice it on the blues right away, but it can also be difficult if you're really not used to listening to what you're playing and coming up with something from that. You need to train that a bit, and you can actually just do that rubato. Just try and see what you can come up with if you play first a call on the F7 and then a response on the B flat 7. Then that could be something like so now I have that, then I want to have a response. Then I can just do, maybe I can just go back and forth between those two. So actually when I play this, then the response is almost like a variation on the call. And here we get something else that's a little bit more a subtle part of how you can use call response. And this is something, actually, if you want to hear somebody who uses call response extremely well, and also not only on a blues, then you should check out Wes Montgomery. When it comes to using call response, he's really, really good at that, and he's also very good at creating longer sentences in his solo. So if you listen to his solos, because he recorded 4 and 6 3 or 4 times, I think, and I have 2 videos on 2 different solos on. I'll link to a playlist in a card up here and also in the description of the video. Maybe check out those and see how he's, or here actually, how he's making phrases and how he's using phrases and also sort of playing this ping pong game with himself. So I think there's one in one of them he's going. So here we have like a call that's the octave statement, it's just 2 notes, and then we get, oh sorry, this arpeggio figure as the first response, and then the second time we get a variation on that. And in that way he's creating something that's lasting for 4 bars and really connecting the different things he's playing, and it's something that is a huge part of his playing, and it's a really, really good place to check it out because it's also quite clear when he does it. Another way of working with the call response is also that if you play a melody, if you want to be a little bit more subtle about it, if you're playing a melody that is going in one direction, then that can serve as a call, and you can actually just make it a response already by playing something that's in the opposite direction. So what I mean with that is, if we take the F7 and the B flat 7 again, then that naturally will sound as a response. And probably if I do it the other way around as well, this works as well. So really just simple phrases, and just using the fact that one melody is going down, well then the response to that is going to be a melody in the opposite direction. And these are things that you can just work a little bit with and try to get into your playing when you're improvising over a song that you already know, and that is going to make your solo a lot better to listen to. The reason that I can keep on publishing videos every week is that there is a community of people over on Patreon that are supporting the channel. I'm very grateful for their support, and it's because of them that I can keep on making all these jazz guitar and music theory videos. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. If you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. Once you start working on call response, you also start to develop your ability to really think in phrases and also think of your solo as being separate phrases. And that means that you can also start working with another really useful skill if you want to work with a sort of a concept behind developing the melodies that you're playing. And that concept is motifs. I think we all know motifs. They are pretty much everywhere in all music. It's one of the strongest ways of creating a melody on all kinds of levels. So it doesn't really matter whether it's Star Wars and every time Darth Vader walks in, it's like, or if it's in terms of a jazz piece. If you listen to a song like Autumn Leaves, really that's just one melody and it's moved around the scale. So in that way that is a motif that is then just moved around through the key, and in that way creating the melody. And of course you can think like this as well, and that's also a nice way to create something. I mean, it's hard to say that that the Darth Vader theme or that Autumn Leaves is not a strong melody. So of course that's something you also want to have in your own playing. In this solo I'm working with a 3-note motif, so it's really just this A diminished triad, so, and then I'm just moving that through the changes, and when I'm working with the motif you can hear that I'm also adding stuff to it, I'm moving it in the bar, but essentially it is just the same thing that I'm moving around, so. And then I'm adding, there's a huge chunk that I'm adding in here. Again, I'm not entirely sure what it was that I played, it's just an approximation of what's going on. And then this motif on the B flat 7, developing that to the B diminished, and then back to the first one. So in that way I just keep on going with that motif and developing it and working with just finding a way of playing it, but that gives me some way of playing something that's always going to be related to what I just played. And that's again also about training this ability to listen to what you just played and then create what is coming next out of it. And in this case you're really just sort of trying to stick with the same thing and in that way connecting it, where call response is a little bit, possibly a little bit more abstract, but also a little bit more varied. Of course, if you only play the same motifs, you have to be very creative not to make it sound boring, but you also want to be really good at working with the motifs. The basic way that you start working with this, I think, is, of course, you want to work on it while you're soloing, but if you're trying to do this in time and you're not used to it, then that can be a little bit difficult. And then it just makes sense to just take a simple melody and then try and move that through the changes. And then also try to be a little bit creative. So it's not enough to just play the same phrase all the time and then voice lead that through the changes. That can be a good beginning exercise, but it's also going to get really boring. So you still want to be creative and you still want to keep creating variations, because one thing is that you want to be able to move the motif, but you also want to be good at developing that motif so that it's not sounding like you just have one melodic idea and you're going to stick with that all the time. So let's see, so if I take the blues and F and then just go through that, if I take this, so So in this way, I'm really sticking, I want to be clear about it, so I'm sticking to that same motif, and probably in a real solo with this is okay as an exercise, but in a real solo I would probably abandon that motif before I went through the whole chorus, because it gets too predictable and in that way a little bit boring. You want to work on it like this, and then you want to use it, of course, with taste and develop that. And that's also a part of thinking in phrases and sort of getting away from just thinking about what you have to play over each of the chords. One of the ways that I learned the most about playing melodic solos was by analyzing other people who I thought were really good at it, so analyzing transcriptions. If you want to see some of those analysis videos that I made where I'm analyzing people like Wes Montgomery and Pat Metheny and Jim Hall, who I consider to be really melodic, then check out this playlist. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar and it's the first time you see one of my videos, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. That's about it for this time. Thank you for watching, and until next time.